Hello, everyone. Sorry I couldn't be there with you this week at the STEMFI workshop. I was there last year and I enjoyed the workshop quite a bit and being there with the cohort that we had last year. So I wish I could be there with you this year. But as my colleagues probably mentioned, I'm on professional development leave and we're actually in the Netherlands right now. And I'm doing work here on something called Open Microcredentials. That's actually why I'm here in the Netherlands. And it's something that we want to offer to you too as part of the STEMFI experience. So I'd like to take just a couple minutes here and explain to you what the STEMFI Open Credentials are and how you can go about earning them. So the agenda today, by the way, who I am, if you've never met me before, I'm Rick West and I'm in the Instructional Psychology and Technology Department in the McKay School of Education. So what I'd like to talk about briefly is what are open badges and microcredentials, because some of you, this may be the first time you've heard about it. And second, why they're relevant to education, why we should care about them. That's kind of just in general why this is a big deal. And then three is how do we do it for STEMFI here. So first talking about why we do open microcredentials. For me, it's because I look at how society is changing and think that education needs to change a lot with it. So I'm going to throw out some ways that I see society changing, and you may agree or disagree with some of them, but we can talk about some of the ways that I think at least that society might be changing. First, we see that the number of people going in for bachelor's degrees is growing exponentially. So you look at this data in 1970, 270 bachelor's degrees, and that doubled, more than doubled, in about 30 years. And it's still growing since then. So we have an exponential number of people around the world that are trying to get into universities, trying to get education, and we can't provide all the education that they need just within the universities. That's going to become very difficult to do in the near future. The other big trend that's happening is this idea of lifelong learning, that it's not enough to just go to the university for 4 years, get trained, and then you're good to go for the rest of your career in a job. That's the way it used to be. But now people are required to retool every couple years and change careers every 5 years. And so mechanisms to enable lifelong learning and lifelong credentialing of their skills is becoming more important. The other trend that we see is that learning happens everywhere, not just in one place. So even though we give out the degrees at the university, we're not the only place that people are learning. And there should be credentials that recognize the learning that people do outside of the university as well as inside the university. The other trend that I see in education is that we're focusing more on competencies rather than courses. So this comes from Capella University, and I know we're not a big fan of Capella University as a for-profit university. They've obviously got some challenges. But I do like this aspect of what they're doing. You look here at this competency dashboard that they give their students, where they talk about here's how many criteria, how many competencies you need to have, here's how many you've got, here's what you're working on to get those competencies that you still lack, and here's the courses where you could get those competencies. It lays it out very well for the student in terms of competencies and what they need to be able to be prepared for the kinds of jobs they want. And this also speaks very well to employers who are asking for competency-based credentials rather than just grades, which is what we've been giving them in the past. So I see this kind of thing trending upward as employers are asking for these kinds of readouts. More on competency-based education, that instead of being focused on how much time you spend in a classroom, more focused on the learner and how long it takes them to master certain competencies. People moving at their own speed and doing things that are individualized until they reach mastery level. By the way, I apologize that my camera is blocking off a few things. If I'm blocking anything too important, I'll make sure to let you know and read it to you. The other trend that I'm seeing, and this kind of ties in a lot with STEMFI, is that students are asking for experiences instead of lectures. They want to be active. They want to be doing. They want to be changing and affecting the world and not just learning about it. And so they want to be out doing things. Another thing I see is that testing is changing. And I love this quote from Eva Baker, who is the former president of the American Educational Research Association. And she said, "My image of a qualification is a validated assessment. obtained inside or outside of school. Each qualification is not a new test, but an integrated experience with performance requirements. I love that. So rather than a test, it's a validated assessment. And I'll change the wording there and call it a validated performance. And that's what I think we're moving towards. I think we need credentials that show, hey, you did something and somebody validated that you did something, and that's your assessment. That's your evidence that you know how to do something, is that you actually did it and somebody watched you do it. So I think we're moving towards these validated performances as the new type of assessments. And students, of course, wanting to take control of their learning. They're wanting choices. They want to choose what they're doing. And that's a good thing. We should encourage that. We should want students to be actively engaged in their learning. Also, this is employers are, as I mentioned, are looking for new ways to assess the skills of recent graduates. 78% saying, hey, we want different ways to understand the skills that students have. Grades and transcripts are not enough anymore for us. And that's what employers are saying. So anyway, this all comes to say we need new credentials to match the 21st century learning that we have going on and to match the 21st century economy. We need educational credentials that help students get into that 21st century economy. And the credentials that I think do that well are these open credentials, these open micro-credentials particularly. So let me talk a little bit about that. If we compare credentials in education, macro credentials like a degree, those are your traditional credentials. They get awarded after a long period of time or a great deal of experience, a depth in one area, and that's okay. That's a good thing. I just don't think it's sufficient. It shows learning from one institution. Transcripts have lots of information, but sometimes that information isn't usable. I'll show you why here in a minute. And the credential is detached from the evidence and the rubric of what you had to do. So you get a grade, but you don't know what that grade meant because it's not connected to the actual thing you did to earn that grade. And the learner doesn't own the credential, of course. They've got to ask the university for permission to have their own evidence of their learning. And I think that's problematic philosophically. So macro credentials struggle with specifics. They take all the stuff you do in class and they just throw it all together into a blender and blend it up, and they give you a B or an A or a C or whatever they give you. And it doesn't really tell you what specifically you know how to do and what specifically you were able to accomplish in that semester. So that's the problem with macro credentials. So micro credentials are this new idea that about 6 or 7 years old. They're not very old. And the idea is that you give a credential for specific skills and knowledge. And these can be transferred across systems. That's one of the big innovations. So if you get a micro-credential at Brigham Young University, and then let's say you transfer, you get hired by IBM, and you start working for IBM, and they do micro-credentials too as part of their professional development, your micro-credentials can just suck right into their system and can be right part of that professional development system at IBM. And it can go the other way around. In fact, IBM does issue open micro-credentials, and those micro-credentials are now accepted for credit at Northeastern University. So we see this kind of breaking down some of these barriers, that people can move in between the formal and the informal, the workplace and the institutional learning, and take their credentials with them. And those credentials can float in between those systems. And this makes it so that the credentials can be very stackable. You can stack them together to form degrees or to form nano degrees or certificates or different things like that. And they can be easily transferable. So, and the other thing that I really like about them is they are data rich. So they're just a little image. They look like just a cute little image icon, but inside is all this computer data telling you what this badge is, what this micro-credential is, where you got it, what you had to do to get it, when you got it, who gave it to you, the credentials of the person who gave it to you, what standards this credential aligns to, what objectives it solves, the expiration date for when this credential should not be good anymore. All of this stuff is just packed into this credential. So it actually gives you a lot more information than the traditional transcript that we give out right now. And so this is what it looks like for a student. Student gets these badges, has all this links to all this data, and this is an early prototype. There's lots more data now that you can put into your badge. You can then take your badges, and if you have too many of them, you can organize them into collections. And so you might say, here's my collection of science badges, here's my collection of physics badges, here's my collection of technology badges. And then you can show these collections to different employers based on what you need at a given time. So you don't have to show them everything. You as the learner control your credentials and show your credentials to whoever you want to. So that's the big idea. That's basically what open micro-credentials are all about. And you can give them for anything. You can give them for being a member of something, for attending something. I don't know that those credentials are worth very much, but you can give them for assignments. You can give them for knowledge that people have. You can give them for their participation in activities, like their role that they played. If they're the project manager or the evaluator or the mentor. You can give them for competencies. You can give them for character traits like integrity or stick-with-itness or, creativity. You can give them for career skills like professional communication and project management. Anything that you can collect evidence for, you can give the credential for it. And so that opens up a lot of possibilities as well. That kind of really opens up a lot of possibilities if you think about it in terms of what education can be. So people say, that's all fun. Is anybody actually doing this? I've never heard of this before. Well, we've got over 1,500 issuing organizations around the world giving out open micro-credentials. So it is new, but it is growing, and it's becoming a thing. So the question is, what about us? Can we use, well, I'll say two things first. If you want to do open micro-credentials in your own classes, come talk to me. I'd be happy to show you how to do it. It takes about 5 minutes to set up an account. Really, the work is in developing the assessments, right? As soon as you know how to assess the learning, creating the actual badge, the actual micro-credential, takes about 5 minutes. It's not very hard. So I can help you do that because I'd love to see this take off more at BYU, and I'd be willing to help you do that. We have several groups here at BYU that are already doing micro-credentialing. We do it for technology skills for the teachers. We do it for student technology training in the library. When you go do that IT training in the library on the 4th floor, they give badges now for students that complete those courses. There are badges associated with design thinking that are available here in the university, hopefully associated with the minor. BYU Pathway is looking at it. Independent Study is looking at it. The Center for Teaching and Learning is looking at it as well. So lots of groups are looking about how to do digital micro-credentialing here at BYU. So what about us? Can we do it at STEMFI too? I think so. So we have some badges for you to earn as well, some micro-credentials for you to earn as well. Why should you care about these? Well, because when you go up for CFS, for promotion and tenure, they want to know evidence that you're trying to become a better teacher. And a lot of times people kind of don't know what to say in that part of their portfolio. They say, well, I promise, I look at the student ratings and I try to fix myself every semester and I talk to colleagues and I go to lectures and I go to conferences. And they don't really know how to prove that they're working on their teaching. So these badges prove that, right? You're in the STEMFI workshop. This will be a certificate that you can have that you can add easily to your portfolio. It shows evidence that you are improving your teaching. We did get sign off of the previous academic vice presidents that this could be part of a CFS packet. It communicates to others what you've done in STEMFI, like administrators, and hey, it's kind of fun, right? We'll try it out. We'll see what we think about it. So this is how you earn it. Basically, do what we're asking you to do already, and then we'll take all that data and put it into a credential for you. So we have 3 different badges for you. One is a learning credential. Attend the workshop, do the readings, come every day, participate, be actively engaged, and you'll get a learning credential that you've learned about STEM, student-centered teaching. Then there's a doing credential. If you do it over the next year and you participate in the cohorts, you practice it in your own teaching, you collected some evidence about it, then you get the doing credential. And we'll give that to you in a year at the end of the STEMFI experience. Then there's a master level credential that is for those that go the extra mile. So we're going to ask you to reform one class or part of one class. Do it in a second class. Teach it to your colleagues. Do it again. Do research on it. Do things like that. This is a lot more of a flexible badge. You collect evidence for why you think you're a master of student-centered teaching. Send us the evidence and we'll look it over and give you that master level badge for going above and beyond and doing more than we asked you to do. So that's all I have for you today. If you have any questions, email me and I can answer your questions about how these credentials work, if you want to do it in your own teaching, or if you just want to know more about the STEMFI credentials themselves. So thank you. I hope to see you around in the cohort meetings in the fall.